Thank you for staying with us. Indeed, we can have a world of ordinary people that would live life the way the Creator wants us to. And one of those ways is don't just live for yourself. Live and care about somebody else. Your life is not all about you. Okay, so hold on there. So our first topic, we'll get the show going. A look at the economic sustainability plan. The fallout of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy is no doubt worrisome, but the federal government is attempting to strengthen the economy, doing its best to strengthen the economy, they say. On Wednesday, the Federal Executive Council approved the Economic Sustainability Plan recommended by the Economic Sustainability Committee led by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. The plan is to help cushion the effects of the pandemic on the economy. We take a look at how truly that plan will help to sustain the economy. Okay, so joining us is a principal partner with Dion and Associates, and he joins us from Kent, England, Mr. Charles Iyore. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Iyore.
Good morning, viewers. Good morning, Mr. Egbe.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. It's pretty warm out here in England, but it's all right.
Indeed, it's all right. Let's look at this whole thing. Yes, globally, we know that the pandemic has affected economies across the world. No economy has been insulated from this whatsoever. One way or the other, they've all been impacted. But if you were to look at it generally, before we come down to us here, what would you say it's been like for the economy?
Globally, I think the global economies are having the biggest shock of their time. I was at the FT webinar with the governor of the Bank of England. That's about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he had put in £200 billion into the economy. Last week, they put another £100 billion into the economy. That's to the extent that they've had to sustain jobs. But because the linkages are working, it's easy to know where the money will go. It's not likely that's going to be wasted. And if they need to take the money out of the system, they know exactly what to do. America has similar figures, much, much larger. So the world is aware that times are not normal. And the world needs to know that those who can't go to work need to be supported. Otherwise, they'll be totally out of the picture. For us in Africa, I don't even think our own economies were broken before. So the COVID crisis weakened it even further. So let's see how this gives us an opportunity to press the reset button and do a good job.
Talking about pressing the reset button, the federal government has come up with what they call a transit plan, between the Economic Recovery Growth Plan and the Economic Recovery Growth Plan successor plan currently being worked upon. That transit plan, that's the NESP, they call it, the Economic Sustainability Plan. Now, in that plan, the committee recommended or put forth about 2.3 trillion to help cushion the economy and move it forward. Is it about the monies, or is there something that is workable in that plan?
Okay. Thank you very much. I cannot comment on that plan because I didn't draft it. So I'll comment on that plan based on what my expectations are as an individual and those on whom the plan will be executed. So broadly speaking, I will say that the all economies, and the Nigerian economy is no different, is like a market. And people need to go there with their resources and savings to get what they need first. Then they start getting what they want, which is a want list can be large. Now, in our own economy and in most of Africa, only a very small population can go there to get what they need and want. The large majority of people can't even afford what they need. And the list of the things they can afford reduces every day as their currency suffers. What that indicates is that the economy is basically unstable. Now, a situation where you can't even buy what you need cannot just be a matter of what is in your pocket. It may well need to do with the way the trade and exchange linkages are working. So I'll give you an example. When we had the colonial masters, they put in the big rail system to take away all of the cash crops. They were not interested in what your food crops were doing. Immediately they left. Even that cash crop evacuation system was destroyed or not neglected. And everybody began to focus on this mineral item, which is all shrouded in secrecy, to be able to do what they needed to do. When it became a situation where there was bother in the society, they began to use that same money to import food items because they couldn't produce their own locally. So you had food riots all over the place. So for me, if that can be addressed by the economic sustainability plan, then I will say we've done well. I don't want a situation where the MDAs become the government itself and or the people themselves, and then hopefully if they do well, everybody will benefit. I'd rather have a target of where we want to go as a nation, and then the MDAs use their resources to achieve those objectives. So that's what I'm saying. Many people are going to the market, they can't get what they need. And you can't use, because this is about almost 90% of the population, you can't use safety nets to carry that. And safety net is going to break. So we need to be able to see, can the people, after all this, become part of the equation? More than 90% of Nigerians, and indeed all Africans, are excluded. In my own view, the only two countries you can take away from this are Morocco and Botswana. The jury is still out for Rwanda because it's the first position. And South Africa is unraveling. So, and I think to a large extent, Nigeria has what it takes to set the standard for the world, and hopefully they'll do it. I wasn't part of drafting the plan. I'm just telling you what my expectations would be and what societies will expect to see if the plan is properly executed. Thank you.
Okay. The thing about plans, economic recovery plans around the world is that most of them are talking about stimulus packages. But from what you put out there, you said something about people going to the market and not able to get what they need. In this plan, the federal government is putting forward about 500 billion, or thereabouts, I want to be fair, 500 billion as a stimulus package. It's already appropriated for in the amended 2020 Appropriation Act. But the question of distribution of that 500 billion would now come in. How effective would the distribution be? In your expectations, again, since you're talking about expectations here, do you think it will be properly distributed, and what areas should they focus on?
Well, I was still in Nigeria when the COVID-19 started. I was asked my opinion about what would be done because I told everyone then that I think that our doctors can manage the medical situation. I've never had a challenge with Nigerians being able to do it. They did it well in Ebola. But I felt that the way we distributed our resources would be flawed. And that's where we will unravel, not the medical side of it, the economic side of it. And I suggested then that what they needed to do was to ensure that this was a joint effort, not distributing money to people. For example, I said you should create food banks all over the place. And then you need to qualify to be able to go to the food banks. Now, most of them have donations from all agencies, but there's no structured way of accessing food in the food banks, apart from what they pack and distribute all over the place. So you're giving food to those who might not need, and those who need might not get it. That's the first one. The same thing happens also with how you distribute your drugs. So at the end of the day, it's about our logistics plan and the way we procure what we need to distribute. If you don't get those things right and the system unravels, that will be our failure. And for me, really, I won't be able to say if it's been distributed well or not. We need to know all the food that has been given as donations to the states, which are not in food banks. Clearly, there are no food banks. How much of it has been clearly distributed? So it's only those who are there on the field who say, has the food gotten to them or has it not gotten to them? I have a feeling that there's always a sense of urgency amongst us Nigerians. When the challenge is high, we always rise up to the occasion. No one had expected us to survive with Ebola. And I had the opportunity of speaking to the president of the World Bank somewhere in England. And he was asking me, how did you get out of Ebola? And I said, well, our doctors are fantastic. And generally, if we rise up to the occasion, we can come. But very often, we don't rise up to the occasions. We are covered in bubbles, Where does it come from? What is religion? What is creed? Those bubbles really don't work. If those bubbles are not allowed to play and competence and strategies come into play and everyone's not being tactical about quick advantage or quick wins, we should be able to do it. I think the personnel we have both in the cabinet and outside can do a good job.
All right.
Our doctors, can you see, have done very well. Kudos
Okay,
to them.
Mr. Yori, we'll take a moment, but we'll come back to continue the conversation. Viewers, just stay with us.
On March the 9th and 16th, when the central bank announced some economic stimulus measures to cushion the effects of COVID-19 on the economy, it sounded like music to the ears.
Any intervention loan?
The interventions include a 100 billion naira fund in healthcare loans to pharmaceutical companies, another 50 billion naira COVID-19 target credit facility for households and SMEs, plus a trillion naira in loans for local manufacturing and production across critical sectors, among others. In an interview with Channels TV on May the 19th, 2020, the CBN confirmed readiness to boost disbursal.
A lot of businesses are running out of cash, and you will see us respond this week. We've been working with the NMFP and a couple of other providers to see how we can utilize technology properly to, one, front-load a lot of the activities.
A week later, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele reeled out the numbers of beneficiaries at a media briefing.
Under the 100 billion healthcare sector intervention fund, the bank has approved and disbursed 10.15 billion. The bank has also approved 10.9 billion to 14,331 beneficiaries under the 50 billion naira targeted credit facility for households and small and medium enterprises, out of which 4.1 billion naira has been disbursed to 5,868 successful beneficiaries.
And now we took to the streets to confirm the reality of disbursements amongst the few companies, and some companies confirmed to us that they are already in receipt of the funds, but they will rather be confidential with such information due to some of the disclosure clauses in their company's rule books. Enugu-based Juhel Pharmaceutical Company is one of the key beneficiaries of the healthcare fund, while cooking gas merchant Adejo Negadu is a recipient of the Target Credit Facility for SMEs.
We applied and we have received the money. And we're already working with the money. And the essence of the money is to expand our factory, be able to manufacture most drugs in Nigeria.
I applied without knowing anyone, and I was granted after signing the agreement, which was the collateral, and I accessed the money within 48 hours.
But there are also those who are yet to benefit from the funds.
Well, Nimet International Pharmaceuticals PLC has applied, and up to last week, we're aware that it was being processed.
I've applied, I've been given offer letter, but yet there is no disbursement. CBN has not done any disbursement for some certain categories of pharma.
With about 10 months to the closure of the 5% interest rate repayment window, the CBN remains keen about disbursement, leaving the public wondering what percentage of the 41.5 million MSMEs is being targeted. Temple Ashaju, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. We're still looking at the Economic Sustainability Plan, and when we're on that break, we're joined from our Abuja studio by Mr. Odilim Ewengbara, who's a development economist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me just hit you up straight. Before you came on, we had Mr. Iyore talk about his expectations from that Economic Sustainability Plan. So, yes, we know that from the plan that the government's put forth about 2.3 trillion naira. Of that 2.3 trillion in that plan is 500 billion, which is called a stimulus package. Now, and I asked Mr. Iyore, what are his expectations as regards the distribution of that? You as an economist and seeing that plan as it is, what do you think would happen? Do you think it will be followed through, and would following through make any difference?
Thank you so very much for inviting me and also for asking this question. I think it is a beautiful plan. I've studied the plan, although they say the devil is in the detail. But it is the type of plan we would have had 10 or 20 years ago. I'm so impressed that with this plan, if we implement it up to 60%, Nigeria will witness a lot of economic growth. And the recession we're expecting might be less. So I'm impressed. I'm so impressed that, and let me put it in this way. The fiscal policy and monetary policy people have finally come together to work hand in hand. That's why we have this beautiful plan. MFLA, as the CBN governor, is going to end up becoming the best ever CBN governor we have had. Because not only he has taken the bull by the horn, but he has taken an unconventional route that no CBN governor since the creation of this country and the running CBN has ever done that. He has discovered that there's no way small businesses can be empowered, can be financed using commercial banks. Commercial banks are looking after their shareholders and investors' interests. And as a result, they have no interest in helping small businesses, let alone micro businesses. So he has discovered that and is investing directly in the small, micro, and startup businesses. That is beautiful. Now we look at the plan they have in place. For me, it is what we would have done many years ago, but be it as it may, it is okay now. WTO has the neoliberals who have been pushing for countries to all join hands together, open their borders. WTO is in crisis because of this COVID-19, and Nigeria must take advantage of the crisis in order to internalize this economy. That is the word-looking economy, and ensure no goods that could be made in Nigeria are allowed into this country. So if we do implement this plan, I will assure you that this plan will take us very far, especially because it will allow small businesses to actually grow, and it will also come up with the job creation and reduce poverty and unemployment. So for me, it is a good plan, but along the line, we have to talk about some of the details. One of the things I want CBN to do is CBN must create Venture Bank of Nigeria, so that the investment angle of CBN must be professionally handled by an agency that could be called Venture Bank of Nigeria. Because CBN will have difficulty following the small investors and the highly technological products that they may not understand the details. So that is an area I want CBN to go into. Another one is, if we are talking about a forward-looking economy, we must increase the local content to cover visually most items that could be made in Nigeria. For example, I have been the advocate of let's stop foreigners to come here and set up commercial businesses like shops, like Shoprite and Co. And they bring 99.99% of what they sell from overseas, especially from China and things like that. We must come up with a local content policy that will ensure that 70% of what anybody sells in Nigeria, those mega supermarkets, must be locally sourced. This way, our local producers will have market for their products, so that when you give them funding, they'll be able to get a market to merge it and be able to pay for the loans.
You've made some suggestions here that I'll just move it to Mr. Yere and see what he thinks, if that would help in meeting his expectations that this plan would move the nation and indeed its people forward. Mr. Yere, before we went on that break, you were talking about what you thought could have happened. You said the medical team, the medical personnel in Nigeria can handle the situation if properly equipped. But within that period, we've had resident doctors go on strike and return, suspend the strike, and they're back again. But then the issue of welfare is still there. There are some who say they've not been taken care of, their emoluments have not been paid as they should have. Maybe they've been paid right now. But as that Wednesday, Thursday, a couple of people that spoke to me said they had not been settled and the issues of welfare and insurance were there to play. But Mr. Ewingba talks about local content manufacturing and sale, if that is looked into. So if you look at local content manufacturing and sale and then local content in terms of personnel, put the two of them together, would that help to meet your expectations?
I will say so, but you've got to go into the history of how we got here. You must realize that the real sector was totally destroyed because of the exchange rates. They were punitive, made it not sensible to produce locally. So it's not as if we didn't have a local drug manufacturing sector before 1988. So if you don't address those issues and the currency is declining at a regular basis, it's difficult for anyone who has long-term plan to execute. And drugs are not manufactured overnight. If today they manufacture and make an assumption that you'll buy it at 5 naira, and that 5 naira is worth $1, and then after they've manufactured, it then becomes that $5, then that 5 naira becomes 30 cents. It's totally out of the picture. So those are the issues, and for the large for too long, we depended on the dollar remittances or the exchange rate as a means of running the economy. We become a dollar-focused economy. This gives us an opportunity to press the reset button and change that trend, and ensure that the impetus for growth in the economy is not the dollar but the naira. And I think that's what we need to do. I don't think the skills required for manufacturing don't exist. They do exist here. I know that a lot of all of the serious work that was being done in the University of Ibadan in those days met world standards. So, but you must agree that the team that is working now is trying to overturn 40 years of wrong planning, and that's not easy. But again, we can't keep giving excuses. We need to do it. Let's give it a try and see how well it works. That's my input.
Okay, Mr. Wegbar, part of that package includes some level of borrowing. How be this? They called it low-cost loans that are interventionary from the central bank. The borrowing plan as it is, some economists argue that Nigeria is borrowed too much. And then some others will say the borrowing as against the GDP is still okay, we can still play around that. But if we continue at this level of borrowing, even at this time, would that help?
This is a very beautiful question, and it's a complex question when you do not understand the mechanics of economics. You see, Nigeria is underborrowed, and Nigeria is overborrowed when you look at the items that we borrowed money for. Now, Nigeria is underborrowed when you look at our debt to GDP, but Nigeria is overborrowed when you look at our debt service to revenue ratio.
Okay, Mr. Agbara, just hold on a second. We'll come back to you. Let's get back to Mr. Yore and see. Mr. Yore, you were saying something. We didn't get that.
Yeah, you were saying if the borrowing or the money that's going to be given will deliver the results. Isn't that is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, you ask the question.
Yeah, that's the question, even though I directed it to Mr. Agbara. But head and weigh in on it, then we'll go to Mr. Agbara.
I didn't quite get, Mr. Egbe, I didn't quite get what you said.
No, I said the question, I directed it to Mr. Nwegbara as regards the borrowing. So maybe we should just go back to Mr. Nwegbara so that he can finish his answer, then we'll come back to you, because he's just made one statement there. Nigeria is overborrowed, Nigeria is underborrowed, but we'll come back to you. Let Mr. Nwegbara finish his response to that question.
Thank you. So Nigeria has been borrowing for consumption rather than for investment. And anybody who borrows for consumption rather than investment will have a high cost of servicing his debt. So what Nigeria needs to do right now, and I've said the time with that number, we have to externalize our borrowing, which means external borrowing, which is cheaper and which is targeted at investment. Now we reduce our domestic loans so that we allow small businesses and other businesses to take advantage of the debt market. But the good thing about domestic loans is that you can actually do quantitative easing, or you do loan buyback. And that's what I've been telling this government to do, any government to do. Look, we can no longer service our domestic debt. It is too huge. So what we need to do is to do quantitative easing. And I think gradually this government is doing it. That's why they are looking at CBN to provide the bulk of the money for this plan they have. So in essence, I will encourage this government to borrow using debt sustainability analysis to ensure that there's a plan for the money to be borrowed, and the plan to pay back the loan. That will mean that you are able to come up with a plan to show the return on investment of the loan we are having and how it can be able to pay back a loan. If we do that, Nigeria can borrow up to 70% of its GDP. Most countries are over 150, 120, 110 of their GDP. And the truth of the matter is that if you are in a business and you believe in your business, you will continuously invest in your business. And to invest in your business, you have to borrow, because you may not have the money within your revenue to improve your investment. So there's nothing wrong with borrowing, but we have to go back to the drawing board and ensure our borrowing is actually targeted at investments, and those investments must have high return on the debt, rather than borrowing for consumption or for social services that we actually have any serious return on the investment or on the loan. Thank you.
Okay, let me go take it to you, Mr. Yore. He said Nigeria is overborrowed, Nigeria is underborrowed, but Nigeria has been borrowing for consumption. But then, even if Nigeria must borrow, we need to borrow more externally, because as it stands, the nation can't even service its local borrowing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that, but to a large extent, you can't say because you might die, you will not take medication, because ultimately there is some measure of sensible borrowing. There's no one single approach that will deliver us out of this quagmire, which has been on for more than 40 years. And I'm not in the team. I don't know how they've come into their conclusions, but you really cannot refuse to borrow. All we're saying that if you borrow and there's a deficit, there must be a plan that the economy will grow enough to either reduce that deficit or take it out completely. Those facts I do not have. I don't think any country can perform if it doesn't borrow. I mean, if you look at what's going on in Indonesia, they build a new capital. They'll do that in 5 years, and it's not going to affect their budget at all. So it's difficult to say if you don't have the facts to say whether they overborrowed or underborrowed. If you look at the ratios, I don't think they overborrowed. The question I always ask is, the money you have spent, where is the value that we've seen? If you turn the economy around, does it reflect in the pricing of the currency? Is unemployment reduced? All of those issues that need to come into play. It's not a single subject analysis. It's a multidisciplinary approach. Thank you.
The question of value on return is something that a lot of people are concerned about. Yes, indeed, Nigeria's borrowed so much, but the value on return is not really evident. But with this program now that the government is coming up with, Mr. Mbara is suggesting the central bank sets up something like a venture bank where whatever is borrowed is actually invested and monitored. Again, the question of multiplicity of functions, wouldn't that be a problem?
Well, you see, I'm always very sorry for the central bank, if I must use that word, because really the idea is to be able to look out for inflation and catch it before it ruins the economy. But for quite a while now, the central bank has been both the work of the Treasury and monetary policy control, not out of wanting to do it, but because nothing really is happening. And if those things don't exist appropriately, there's no fair balance between monetary policy and your fiscal policy, it's also going to be difficult for banks who are basically set up to make a profit to gamble with their depositors and shareholders' resources. That is the issue. That's the real issue. And we've been saying this since 1988, that you can't do these things one at a time. And you can't decide these things based on the bubble you belong into, but rather driven by competence. And I think there are competent people all over Nigeria, from every village. But very often, like you see, for example, now, the NNPC is returning profits in many of the sectors. And you ask yourself, why? Because people know that you won't mess around with the guy who's minister, which is the president. If he leaves, what happens? Those are the issues, and we need to be able to come in to raise our public conversation. The level of public debates is left to who gets what, who doesn't get what. It's all tactical, no long-term strategic planning. You want to reduce interest rates when you haven't planned what you need to do with your fiscal policy or all of the triggers you need to do. Those are the issues I want to look at, and I don't think you can exhaustively do a good job on a short program like this. Thank you.
All right, we've been joined by Mr. Bongo Adi, Dr. Bongo Adi, who's a lecturer at the Lagos Business School. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Adi.
Thank you very much.
This matter of the economic recovery, the sustainability plan that's been approved on Wednesday.
Yes.
Now, before you came, we talked about how much was put forward, about 2.3 trillion. We also talked about the stimulus package, 500 billion. The question on the minds of a lot of people is the sustainability of the sustainability plan. Won't those monies, the stimulus package, for instance, would it get to where it's supposed to get? Will it not be siphoned? That's a concern. I mean, Mr. Mwegbara and Mr. Yuri have mentioned the effectiveness of this plan. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think if people are questioning or having some reservations regarding the sustainability of the sustainability plan, I think it's justified because in the past 8 years, since 2012, this is the third set of plans that we're having.
But it's considered a transition plan.
Whether it's transitional or you know, whatever it is a plan. So we had a transitional plan during the recession, which is the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Before then, don't forget that we had a plan under the Jonathan administration at the tail end of it in 2012, 2013, the National Infrastructure Master Plan and as well as the National Industrial Revolution Plan. So those were collapsed into the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan of 2016, 2017. So we're just 3 years into the implementation, and then we have not seen any sort of impact evaluation of what happened, what transpired, what worked, what didn't work. Now,
blame it on the pandemic.
Yeah?
Blame it on the pandemic.
Well, we blame it on the pandemic. Now, the pandemic what actually has happened, you know, that has not been happening in this economy, okay? The pandemic, yes. I know that it's exposed our weaknesses. We had this because when you look at the pandemic, it's bouncing back. So given the, you know, that means that we were somewhere, you know, then the pandemic took us back and then we want to come out of it. But I think we are still where we were then. So what the sustainable plan, you know, is supposed to deal with are still the same structural issues that we have in the economy. Now the question is, how sure are we, or how convinced are we that the government has the wherewithal to execute the plan, to implement it, and then, I mean, achieve the right results. People are talking about, overheard you talking about return on investment. We are borrowing money for all this. How are we sure that we will get value for the money that we are getting? So, well, your guess is as good as mine because the structural issues that we have in the system that has undermined the previous plans are still there.
Okay. We'll need to go on another break. We'll come back to continue the conversation. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still looking at the Economic Sustainability Plan. We have Mr. Odinimegba in our Abuja studio. Mr. Charles Yuri joined us from Kent, England. We also have Dr. Bongo Adi, a lecturer at Lagos Business School, here in our studio. Now, as we wind down now, gentlemen, let's bring this home to the man who's selling bread out there. I mean, the simple economy in Nigeria. Because while we have such a beautiful plan, as Mr. Mbara has described as a very viable plan, it's workable if it's followed through and through. The man who's running a simple business, how's he going to survive? I'll read this tweet and then the three of you will win. I'll begin with you, Dr. Adi. So Professor Imonokai says, our economy has already been broken. Federal government should be talking about economic recovery and how it can be reflated by diversifying the economy, reduce the recurrent expenditures and interest rates. He says, the sustainability plans must give feasible disbursement plans that are actually accessible by our SMEs, including farmers. They are the mainstay of any economy. They bridge the gap between the growing middle class, increase productivity, and generate employment. Dumping of goods that can be produced locally must be abrogated. Refinance the real sector with policies that are not short-termed. If agriculture is well financed and licenses are given to modular refineries to generate employment and genuinely reflate the economy. So, Dr. Adi.
Yeah. So if I, start to cherry pick what that professor commented, if you talk about modular refineries, the problem of modular refineries is not about licensing. It's about the overarching regulation, okay? So you cannot have a modular refinery, compete in an economy where price is regulated. So before you have any sort of modular refinery being operational, it's been on for a very long time now, the whole issue about modular refineries and privatized. We have to deregulate the sector completely, make it competitive so that anybody, any Dick, Tom, or Harry can set up a refinery and then drive it to productivity and competitiveness. Unless that happens, it becomes just rhetoric. Now, let's talk about the small things, okay? Not about the plans. It's not about the stimulus package. It's not about all the things, because we've had plans, as I said. Now, this is about protecting the citizen, okay, from the shock of the pandemic. Okay. In other countries, we've seen what, in addition to giving palliatives and giving people money directly, because they know their citizens, they have the data, they know who does what, they know how this has affected each person, because over time they have built up vital statistics. That is exactly the basic thing that is lacking, the most fundamental thing, basic statistics. We don't have that. We don't know anybody. We don't know who does what. And then we do not even know how to assess them. So when we are making plans at that high overarching level, we don't even know how it's going to get to the man on the street. So the first thing we needed to do is to protect them from the shock that they've experienced. Now, everybody's still paying rent. In some countries, what they did, like in Germany, okay, let's be specific. Germany protected citizens from landlords, okay? They made it illegal for landlords to ask for rent during this pandemic. So they were postponed. They've been able to postpone most of these things, even taxes. So they gave tax waivers to SMEs, to all businesses. So they're not collecting any taxes. But that has not happened in Nigeria. There is no way that the average man has been protected from the shock. So let's talk about protection first before you ask of what you are going to give to them. You have not protected people, and then you're talking about giving them something. So you see that it doesn't really work.
Okay. Mr. Ayere?
Well, I'll just concentrate. I'll concentrate on what you're doing for the farmers. I'd like to let you know that since independence in all African countries, we left some people behind in the countryside. What they want is not money to buy big machines or large loans. They need some of that. What they want is a price stability. In other words, where are the merchant acceptances who will buy those goods for them at a certain fixed price? You can sell a tuber of yam last year for 1,000 naira, and this year is struggling to get 500 naira for it. What you will find is that all those farm hands will drift into the urban centers to do light industrial work. We've let this going on for more than 40 years. So the critical thing is to say, how can we guarantee that those goods bought, not just those items produced, not just the cash crops, but also the food crops, have a certain measure of an acceptance locally, and then a city center where you have a syndicated buyers selling them to those who finally use them. Now, always talk about fair trading, like I've always said, will not be determined in Brussels, Belgium, or Chicago. It will be determined at farm gate. The prices and incomes of those in the rural countryside needs to be protected, not giving them money, buying their produce so that the next year they can put more energy into it. And the large populations you have drifting around in the urban centers will go back because they can make a living in the countryside. We left those guys in the countryside since 1960. Nothing has happened ever since then. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Nwara.
Thank you. First and foremost, let me make this thing clear. Let me make this thing clear as quickly as possible. You know, monetary stability or currency stability is not what you just fix. Nobody does that because it is determined by market forces. All CBN have been doing is dirty floating, which is interventionist monetary policy. But I believe that we'll get to the point of clean floating, where intervention is ceases to exist. Let me also make this thing clear. You know, in 1933, when America was in a deep Great Depression, two important people were brought on board. They were neither economists nor anything that has to do with economy. One was Marian Eccles, who was a secondary school dropout to become the Fed chairman, that is CBN, that's the central bank governor. And another one was Henry McIntyre, who was a two-year architecture dropout, who was made the Treasury Secretary. Everybody was skeptical. But eventually these people returned, reformed, and made the American economy social system driven. So what I'm saying in essence is that, when we talk about these things, let's be a bit clear with the points we are making. I believe that the person talking about not knowing the identity of Nigerians is good. Is right. But we have to come up with social security number. Every Nigerian, as soon as he's giving birth, will have a social security number and die with that social security number. So that we know your social status, whether you are rich or poor, so that when there are issues like this, you know where to intervene. You know those Nigerians, you can quickly meet through your fiscal or monetary or your fiscal intervention, like giving some money or some good support to them. But what this government is doing, I love most, is the ability to allow a small business to have access to market and access to financing. And CBN is giving them access to financing, and the fiscal policy makers are in the process now giving them access to market. These are the two things that will revolutionize our economy, because great economies are driven by small businesses, not by large businesses. And we can talk here from here till tomorrow, but I will assure you that if we implement this into to the greatest point, Nigeria will start seeing economic growth and an inclusive economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Odilime Egbara, development economist, Charles Iyore, principal partner, Dion & Associates, CTA, who joined us from Kent, England, and Dr. Bongo Adi, lecturer, Lagos Business School. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
With us.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Egbara said something there. I just thought I should bring that up. Said something about social security number. There is a national identity number issue that has been going on before the pandemic even hit, and I think it's still happening. You can do that online on your own. The National Identity Management Commission is handling that. I think that will help to gather data. That's what they say. We're trying to collect the data of Nigerians, and that might also help to put things in perspective for the population. But so we'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Internal democracy in political parties. On Thursday, President Muhammadu Buhari dissolved the National Working Committee of the All Progressives Congress, APC, called for immediate suspension of all pending litigation involving the party and its members, as well as the ratification of the party's governorship primary election recently conducted in Edo State. He appointed a caretaker committee for the party in a bid to resolve recent crisis within the party structure. What does that say about internal party democracy? Where are the political parties going? You do remember that not quite long ago, INEC rested some parties, deregistered some parties. They went to court, and the court insisted INEC was right. The question of party ideology has been one thing a lot of people have always talked about, but at the end of the day, when they come together, how is it working out, putting the house together? To help us answer all of these questions, I have here a legal practitioner, a social commentator, and maybe in the course of the conversation, a member of the All Progressives Congress will join us from our Abuja studio. But here in Lagos, we have Chief Godwill Wazirike, who's a legal practitioner. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also here is Chief Biodun Showumi, social commentator.
Good morning.
I remember the last time you came here, you reminded us that you are an Oba. Have you been installed yet?
No. Elect.
Still waiting.
Yeah.
Okay, an Oba elect. Okay. So, gentlemen, let me start with you. In the course of this last week, in fact, before this last week, where the president, well, some say stepped in to calm the stormy waters in the party, things were a little bit here and there. And what's going on? What's happening?
Yeah, one of the major problems we have in the country since 1999 is the issue of internal democracy within the political parties and conflict resolution. Yes, all political parties, including the APC, have their own means of resolving issues structured into their party, but we have seen what happened last week or prior to the president's intervention is the collapse or the non-functioning of the internal conflict resolution mechanisms of the APC. It didn't work, and then necessitating steps being taken by the president, whether you agree or not, with a view to resolve the crisis of the party. So what you have, just like in any other political party, is intense competition for power, by stakeholders within those political framework, trying to control leadership. Then you have the issue of, which could also mean affecting the nomination of candidates for future offices. And being the ruling party, of course, you have the issue of appointee offices. These are the three major issues always in contention within the ruling party. So when you look at the issue with APC just before the president's intervention, it's majorly around the leadership issue and whether Oshiomhole should remain as the leader of the party or he has been removed as sanctioned by the court, and whether the acting deputy national secretary could be the acting chairman, as again ruled by the court, or the constitution stipulated the deputy national chairman, one of the deputy national chairman should preside. So you have that crisis between court's intervention in internal political matters on leadership within a political party, and also the politicians themselves also resisting, court adjudicated settled positions, which have not been overturned, also resisting that, citing their own constitution. The general framework is that courts usually, refrain from getting involved in the internal organization of a political party. But when it now breaks down, like what we saw before the president's intervention, then the courts in some cases would tend to get involved, because we all know that political crisis could affect, the stability of the country, the social harmony, and it could also impact, on governance, in the sense that we've seen that once between the executive and legislative face-off, affecting budget, affecting governance in different ways, affecting confirmation of people into appointive offices. So because of that, judiciary at times tend to delve into it. So what we have seen, as demonstrated before last week, is the failure of even judicial intervention to resolve the problem because of conflicting judgments and the issues of jurisdiction, obtaining judgment in Port Harcourt and obtaining one in Abuja, from courts of coordinate powers. So that is what we've seen played out within the APC that necessitated, the intervention which we saw.
Okay, we've been joined by Honorable Eseme Ibo, a former spokesperson of the House of Representatives and the chairman of the Cross River Basin Development Authority. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Honorable Ibo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I am pleased to be with you this morning.
Thank you. You're looking quite fresh, but are you feeling also fresh about the happenings in your party?
Well, I must tell you that as a party man, I will be unfair to myself and the party to say I am happy. But it's not unexpected. Of course, this is the harvest of what we've always been talking about, the issue of recruitment process into people in various institutions, be it political or in issues of governance. When you are talking about the crisis in a political party, it's not only APC. You have it in PDP, you have it in other places. This is a function of a situation where political parties are no longer political parties, so to speak. They are now political organizations funded, managed, and of course promoted by certain interests, which of course their intention is not necessarily to advance the pursuit of democratic culture and values, but for self-interest. Now, the background of this is very clear. For example, when you begin to have congresses of political parties at various levels, at ward, at local government, and of course the state and national, of course it is a list of the governors. There's just no way you can have a list approved during congresses without the governor contributing 90%. And once they contribute, if it is a local government congress, if it is a state congress, at the end of it, when they're going to national convention, is these same people. So you will see aspirants to the party chairmanship or any other leadership position in the political parties going for campaigns in government houses. They go to the government to secure support. And then during the convention, the governors will just give these words around. He said, look, this is the person we are having for national chairman, we have this for national secretary, and all of that. That is the pattern. And the people will emerge. So at the end of the day, he who pays the pipers dictates the tune. So you would definitely be having conflict of interest. This position has been going on for God knows how long. The governors are the leaders of the party. And I don't know how we came about it. At the end of the day, it's these governors who will determine the leaders of the political parties, the managers of the political parties, from the ward level to the national.
Okay. Honorable Ibo, we'll take a moment here. When we come back, we'll find out the legal implication of all of this from Chief Uwazurike, who is in our legal studio. Back in a moment. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have Honorable Ibo in our Abuja studio, Chief Uwazurike here in Lagos, and Chief Shomi also here in Lagos. Chief Uwazurike, you're a legal practitioner, and this whole matter, before we went on that break, Honorable Ibo was talking about the issues with leadership recruitment process. Talks about what happens at the World Congresses in almost all the political parties in Nigeria. For a World Congress to happen, the governors who are the leaders or the elected officials who are considered leaders of the party at different levels sort of contribute the names that go for the different congresses, whether at the ward level, local government, state, and federal. And at the end of the day, because they pay the piper, they dictate the tune. What does the Constitution or what do the laws have to say about this?
Well, the law presumes that everybody coming to a convention is coming with an open and free mind. But in reality, a delegate is sponsored. He is handpicked. Forget this thing they say about electing delegates. In reality, the puppet masters, they are the governors, they are Mr. President, they are Mr. Secretary. They are the ones who determine who holds what. So there are also good chess masters. They play chess. Let me just give you one small example. When Adam Oshiomhole was elected, there was a position for organizing secretary allocated to Southeast. Rochas Okorocha said, look, as the only APC governor, I must produce somebody. The person there also came from Imo State, in fact, from Rochas Okorocha's own senatorial zone. And the man wanted to come back. The governor said, no, I want somebody else. Ema, oh yeah, you be there. Before we knew it, court case down, up, down, eventually they said, let us settle. Ema stayed back. That is party politics for you, and that's why I say politicians are a species of creation. They manipulate a lot. Now, look at the present state of affairs that just happened during this week. Before the governors, some decided to speak, some did not speak at all. Each one had a certain conclusion in mind. If you remember the species of court cases, one in Port Harcourt, the other one in this and that, ex parte, in the hope that you get a weak judge. A weak judge, I say that with all honesty, because the moment you file a case, everything stops. But a weak judge will say, okay, I hereby grant an injunction, which now sends the wrong message. And once that starts, now you have contradictory orders flying left and right. Now,
even from courts of competent jurisdiction?
Yes, because all the judge will say that what is before me. He's not interested in what is before another person. He says, based on the affidavit we have. But if you remember, when Obasanjo was president, you had a party known as APP first, then ANPP. A day to their national convention, a judge in Abuja, based on expert application, stopped the convention. The NJC then came in and dismissed the judge. After that, judges became careful. I'm talking of nearly 20 years now, so many of them have forgotten what happened. So when a judge issues an ex parte order stopping a convention, he's actually putting himself on the dock. And when we have an active NJC, National Judicial Council, they will zero in on him. You're not supposed to prove that he took bribe or he didn't take bribe. All you have to say is he did not exercise his powers judicially and in national interest. Now, but back to why delegates don't have the freedom. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. So quite often, you find all those people at National Working Committee, National Executive Council, being loyal to the person who put them there, pandering to the person who has the power to remove them. Because those who put them there may not be powerful enough to remove them anymore. And again, you have a party chairman who did not see far enough to see the obstacles. National Executive Committee is supposed to meet every quarter, at least twice a year. But if you have a full year passing, then you have vacancies occurring in those positions. For instance, Deputy National Chairman South. What happened? He has been nominated. He's acting. For him to be a member of the National Executive Council or to even head a party must have been elected at a national convention. Is there in black and white? But they pretend that that's not the position. You have a national secretary. He was not elected. Therefore, he's an acting. You pretend he is actually the national secretary. That is wrong. So, as K.O. Mbadiwo of blessed memory will say, when they comes to become, we now know who is who.
Honorable Abel, let me come back to you again. This matter of party structure, and you've always talked about it for all the years I've known you, you've always talked about the leadership recruitment process. If it's done right, everything will fall into place. But in the middle of that process, there's something that you politicians always talk about: party supremacy. If the party is indeed supreme, that means the leadership of the party determines how the party runs. The leadership there being the chairman, whether national or state or local government or ward chairman, as the case may be. They determine how the elected officials should behave to sustain the image of the party and the ideology of the party, not the elected official telling them how they should run it. That's if the party is really supreme. So the question is the party really supreme?
Well, I won't just come up to say the party is supreme or not. But what I want us to appreciate is that, first and foremost, what is the intended purpose of democratic governance? And what's democracy? Democracy is expected to be the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But in our climb here, we have adjusted the meaning of democracy to the abetment of the tyranny of the minority by the majority. Since sovereignty belongs to the people are the majority. But the people have tended to abet the tyranny of the minority. Who are these people we are complaining about? So democracy involves participation. By the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 25, it is espoused clearly about the issue of participation. And our Constitution even went ahead to emphasize that the primary purpose of government shall be the security and the welfare of the people. So the people are expected to participate in who governs and how they should be governed. So political party management, of course, you cannot take away the fact that you talk about supremacy of the party. The supremacy of the party is only lipstickish within the context of our convenience. But if you move a little bit away from there, you will realize that the proponents of the supremacy of the party, as it were, never intended what the destitutes of democratic values are practicing today. So our political parties, of course, are only parties within the context of registration as a political party. But within the context of democracy, what we have, of course, are not political parties. They are political organizations organized, managed, and put together by politicians of identical plumage to further their personal pursuits, and it has nothing to do with the people. So supremacy of the party, I want to rightly say, and I stand to be corrected, is of course non-existent. It is slipstickish.
Mr. Shomi, I mean, growing up, I do know my mother used to be in the NPN. She had her membership card, and she paid her dues. I mean, you could actually see where she was going to the ward office to pay her party dues, and you see her card, you see, and all of that. Until today, she's over 80. She still talks about her party card. But if indeed, as Honorable Eyibo has said, party supremacy is lipstickish, those were his words, how do we resolve all of this?
Yeah, to some extent I would have to support Honorable Eyibo. You only need to go back and look at how we came into the Fourth Republic. We came in through a process midwifed by the military. The military, in their own usual military culture, are used to giving orders and is being obeyed, not to be challenged by members or in any form. There is no any form of party organization or party supremacy. What the head of state says, is final. And then we now saw so many of those military actors, they came into the Fourth Republic with even the former head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo, emerging, as the president in 1999. Do not forget they are used to military culture. So they've never been de-acculturized, or acculturized into democratic norms or de-acculturized out of the military norms. So they came in with the military culture, and then that affected democratic governance. Immediately what we witnessed was the deinstitutionalization of political parties, in terms of even its mode of conflict resolution. Immediately we see issues like altering rules, intimidation, and all that. So all this happened because their usual military culture and military tactics, and then they were imported into their own system. So therefore, when you look at it from the Fourth Republic, how do you talk about party supremacy when the president, has the final say? Again, if you look at precisely what happened with the way the APC crisis has been resolved, you have a situation where cases are still in courts, and politicians are still politicking, but the president, intervened as the leader, as the supreme leader, as described in some publications of the APC, even though the constitution says the chairman of the party is the leader, and then the whole structure, the NWC dissolved, rightly or wrongly. I'm not arguing for either, but when you take it into consideration, you will realize that there is nothing called party supremacy within the context of this Fourth Republic. Either you look at it as under the PDP led by Obasanjo, or under the APC led by Buhari's administration. What you see is that the wishes of the leaders of those parties, often triumph. And that does not necessarily translate into, the interest of party members, and therefore could not, be ascribed to be party supremacy. A lot of it are their intervention are based on exigencies, to achieve particular goals, not necessarily to achieve, party supremacy. So that concept is nebulous, when you look at it within the context realities of what we call the Fourth Republic.
Chief Wazuike, he's talked about the fact that coming from military era and all of that might have played a role. But I tried to do a little bit of calculation here. For every one former military personnel who's now a politician, there are at least 5 civilians who are politicians. So there are fewer in number. So is there no way that, I thought the majority, a few might have their say, but majority will take the vote? Well, and then what do the laws say about this party membership?
Well, let me just go back in history. Before the French Revolution, we had a president of King of France, the Sun King. That's what he's formerly called. One day, he came and said, oh yes, France will do so and so. And the Secretary of State asked, my king, France has not decided, said no, I am the state. Whatever I say is what France has said. And that is what you're witnessing now. If you go back to Thursday meeting presided over by Mr. President, he moved a motion. First thing was NWC to be dissolved. So and so to be done. And who are you to oppose him? At that moment, he was imposing his will on the party.
But you must also take into account the fact that he never said anything. He waited for internal structures to resolve whatever there was.
Well,
so that was like a last measure.
Internal structure.
You won't agree with that?
I would say contrived.
Okay.
Because when things are happening, you can either step in or you allow them to exhaust themselves or walk into a certain position you have in mind. That meeting was a meeting with predetermined solutions. So for him to have moved it meant he was throwing his weight into the Afri, and nobody would challenge him, even if you're 100 civilians. At that moment, the president and the party had become one. So today, APC and Buhari, one. And it's either you fall in or you don't fall in. You're talking of party supremacy, party membership, and so on and so forth. What causes quarrels in a party is when you are fighting for something that is right and you believe in it. The other man is fighting for something that is wrong. But if he has the ear of Mr. President, you, Mr. Right, will become Mr. Wrong. And that is what has been going on since 1999. The politicians are yet to get their acts together, and we hope that after Buhari, no more military man will be the president. The reason is very simple. We need democracy. There's no democracy today. All we have today is, what does Mr. President say? Since 2015, we have a new line, we say the language, body language of Mr. President. Jonathan and Yar'Adua, if you notice, they were civilians. They were more civil in their approach to issues. They allow people to even say yes or no. But soldiers don't tolerate anything except yes, sir. Now, every party has a constitution, and the party is supposed to be supreme. But if you're insisting on party supremacy in anything you're doing, believe me, in Nigeria today, you find yourself standing outside. And if you're not careful, EFCC will come after you. Suddenly, they will remember all the offenses. Like I said at the beginning, politicians are a special breed. They hold on to a simple statement. Before making that statement, they have programmed it. Deputy National Secretary going to court. In terms of hierarchy of the party, we know where he stood. But they did their homework very well. And the others, Adams Schumer and others, were more interested in showing that Adams was also a general. He was also a major general. That was his problem, the ego. If he had learned very well, the moment he took over, he would have realized that Mr. President is taciturn, he monitors and he watches. And if he takes a position, every other person will follow. So as today, Adams Schumer and all those came up behind him are out. And when this Edo crisis was evolving slowly, he did not read the language very well. Like somebody said, avoid a village quarrel. A village quarrel can derail you when you're already riding high. Today, Obaseki is going for governorship. Adams Schumer is standing outside and is asking, can I come in? And nobody's listening and nobody will give him attention. Like the governor of Kogi said last night, we'll find a place for them. In other words, we'll give them soft landing. But party supremacy in Nigeria is a mere theory. It's never in practice. The legal advisor is supposed to have a prominent position. But where was he yesterday? Well, 2 days ago when the Attorney General of the Federation was swearing party members in, which is an aberration. Malami shouldn't have done that. Attorney General of the Federation is not the legal advisor of a party. I don't know whether the legal advisor attended the meeting or not, but everything was wrong. 2, you have acting chairman of, well, there is a name they use for it, because Adams is still not yet removed. The language of the court is suspended, pending the determination of whether he's still a member of APC. You find the present actors being more of an aberration than a real thing, but because it is Mr. President that moved that thing, those who want to go to court can go, and they will win. But whether that winning will become a Pyrrhic victory, I don't know. But as it is today, there is no democracy in the political parties.
All right, we'll take another break, and when we come back, Honorable Ibo will be looking at how do we resolve this matter of political party membership. Should it be a written thing? What should be the criteria to be called a member of a political party? And indeed, should it be legalized? How these structures are run so that the party stays as a watchdog over the activities of the elected, which is what some will say should be the process in a democracy. We'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have Honorable Ibo here, Chief Wazirike and Chief Shomi are all here. But I have this message from architect Nyaitok. He says, until the day party members are willing to pay membership dues that will be used to run the party and shun the false comfort of political investors, we will never have internal democracy in political parties. That's coming from architect Nyaitok Ezekiel. Honorable Ibo, I said when we'll come back, we'll bring this to you. Let's begin to talk solution now. How do we get membership of political parties to be viable as it was in those days? My mom is over 80. She still has a membership card. I don't know what she wants to do with it. I think it's UPN. No, it's not UPN. It's NPN, yes. She still has a membership card. So how do we get membership of political parties to be viable to the extent that the party stands as a watchdog so that elected public servants live to uphold the ideals of the party on which platform they are elected?
Yeah, thank you very much. First and foremost, I must bring to the fore one very critical issue. First, is there any political party in Nigeria with ideology? Answer is no. Political parties should be able to set up its own agenda, must have its own ideology. And it is the ideology that will persuade politicians or potential members to now find its affiliations and go through the various criteria for membership. And the absence of ideology, of course, has derobed the political parties the value and the meaning it's supposed to give to itself. What we are having, and I stand to be corrected, is not democracy. What we are having is civil rule. Because the issue of inclusion is not there at all. Political inclusion is not there at all. So we are having civil rule. So the moment we begin to attend to a couple of issues facing us, for example, when you are talking about membership of a political party, these things are spelled out in the constitution of all the political parties. But I give you an example. His Excellency, the governor of Edo State, recently joined PDP within 48 hours, and he became a candidate of that party within 48 hours. There were people who bought forms, who went through the screening, who went through the entire process. And if he was given exemption, it was given what is it? I'll come back to that. If he was given exemption or the clearance, how would that affect his candidature? He ought to have first and foremost be cleared. He ought to have foremost be given the clearance by the national, but not giving him the party ticket even before they brought in the waiver. I meant to say the waiver. Yes. He had the waiver after he had already become a candidate. So what happened to those people who were party members, participated in the entire process, paid their dues and all of that? So it has nothing to do with any law. The Electoral Act is rich. The Electoral Act is rich. The extent of its enforcement and the extent of enforcement and implementation is the other problem. And one thing we must not pretend about is that we have 4 unregistered political parties in this country, and their interests are so strong. For example, INEC in itself, in a political process, is an unregistered political party. It doesn't pretend. Wherever it has interest, and of course, it invests so much into that interest. The security agencies at some point will also not pretend of their interests. And then, of course, some parts of some persons in the judiciary, as my brother Wazirike have just said, there are some judges who have interests, and they said, with the facts before me, it's always before me. So these people intervene, participate, promote, and influence political process. So the issue of membership is neither here nor there. You begin to see people moving from APC to PDP, from PDP to APC overnight and getting tickets to run the election. That is to mean that these are political organizations serving as only the primary purpose of serving only as a vehicle to advance the pursuit of its managers or its promoters.
Okay, Honorable, I'm afraid we'd have to bring in the others because we have to go in the next. I understand we have less than 2 minutes to end this segment. So let me just get the 2 chiefs here to weigh in on this so that we can go. Chief Wazirike.
Well, you know, like Honorable said, Governor Obaseki jumped and moved. Izzy Yamu is today the APC candidate carrying their flag. Has Izzy Yamu resigned from PDP? I don't know. All we know is that he has joined PDP, APC. Nobody heard of him resigning. No. But then if we are talking of party supremacy, allowing the law to direct how members behave, then we ask Mr. President, because it is on his desk today, to lead by example.
Okay.
What is very clear is that one major layer to join political parties today is the free perception of free access, to public wealth. And as long as that remains, we won't have political parties serving the interest of the country. So therefore, we need to find a situation, a way the civil society organizations need to advocate, for, reducing, cutting the cost of democratic governance in terms of reducing the salaries of all elected office holders in a way that monetary gains will not be a motivation for wanting to join a political party, but actually the will to serve your community should be the driving force.
Thank you very much, Chief Biodun Shomi, social commentator and also an Oba-elect. Chief Godwin Wazirike, a legal practitioner, and Honorable Eseme Yibo, former spokesperson, House of Representatives, and the chairman of the Cross River Basin Development Authority. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
So as we'll be back in a moment, do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now we're looking at the International Day Against Drug Abuse. According to the 2020 World Drug Report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, about 35.6 million people suffer from drug use disorders globally. This is quite a lot. It's that time of the year we raise awareness on drug abuse and illicit trafficking. The theme for this year is Better Knowledge for Better Care. The hashtag for those on social media is Facts for Solidarity. So join the conversation, Facts for Solidarity, hashtag. To help us understand what this is all about and what we should be doing to gain better knowledge for better care is Ms. Hachette Verk, Project Coordinator, Response to Drugs and Related Organized Crimes in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Verk.
Thank you.
Also here is Mrs. Maria Mfon Ilubuhi, Counselor and founder of Shelter NGO. Thank you, of the Shelter NGO.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let me start with you because you're a counselor.
Yes, I am.
And you've been dealing with this kind of situation in your organization. Tell us what the situation is like.
The drug
use and abuse.
Drug use and abuse in Nigeria is something that should concern us. Yes. So we had the national survey report, the household survey report of the survey was done between 2016 and 2017. The report actually came out in 2018, and I think it was launched in 2019. So it gave us a figure of the people who use drugs in Nigeria, and that's about 14.3 million people use drugs. So that is huge.
Indeed, it is. The question, 14.3 million people use drugs in Nigeria. Ms. Verk, when you say use drugs, is that regular? I mean, some people just go buy Panadol or something. That's not the drugs we're talking about.
No, we are
so let's clarify.
No, we're talking about using drugs for recreational purposes. It could be illicit drugs, but it could also be, and I think that's the more worrying bit as well, it includes actually that as well. So it includes, we have a large number, nearly around, I would say 4 million, over 4 million people who are using tramadol, for example, but not using it for the purpose that it's meant for, but using it to get high. So they're using it for recreational purposes, which obviously then has a big health consequence as well. So there is, it isn't just the illicit drugs that the report covers. It also covers so-called licit substances that are used for purposes that they're not meant for.
Okay, so that report talks about 585,000 that died in 2017 or thereabout in relation to drug use, up to 1/4 from 2008. Those people using these drugs, right? Is it a question of knowledge or a question of enforcement of law that led to these increasing numbers?
So, like, maybe you would say if these people knew, if they knew that they shouldn't use drugs, then they wouldn't have used drugs. So I don't think knowledge alone is enough, because when we talk of drug use, there are other things you have to consider. Though over the years, we've always been talking about knowledge. People need knowledge. If they had adequate knowledge, then they would do better. If they had adequate knowledge, then they would stay away from drugs. But knowledge alone is not enough, because there are other risk factors for drug use. So you could have, for instance, personality traits. You could have mental health issues. You could have family neglect. You could have a community, for instance, a poor and marginalized community. You could have people who are not attached to school or attached to their communities. So a lot of things, they are both biological and environmental factors. So knowledge is good, but we have seen that knowledge alone does not change behavior.
The theme for this year's International Day for Against Drug Abuse is better knowledge for better care. If knowledge alone is not enough, why are we choosing this theme, and how does this theme play in ending drug abuse?
That's a great question. And one of the things we see is, and just to carry on from where Maria left off, is that these deaths are also caused because people don't have knowledge that they can actually get help. So we, for example, in Nigeria, when we got into this COVID-19 and there were restrictions like everywhere in the world, we work with a large group of physicians and healthcare workers. And we've launched something called the Drug Help Net, and which is basically people have volunteered, Nigerian physicians have volunteered to say, we will help the drug use community who have traditionally come to hospitals for help. So now, we've widely advertised this Drug Help Net. People can pick up the phone and get help. But I think the knowledge is also knowing where to get help. If you look at the drug use survey report in Nigeria, there's a large proportion of people who don't even know where to go and don't know that they can get help. So knowledge isn't only about preventing, but it's like, if I'm using, what do I do now? So knowledge is also about that. So it's really getting factual knowledge out to people so that it can help them to make logical decisions. And obviously family members or drug users in crisis can reach out to the Drug Help Net as well.
Okay, in all of this, there is the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency,
yes.
And we have the Secretary, Shadrach Haruna, joining us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Haruna, the matter of drug abuse, drug use and abuse in the country. Now, you've heard the figures. I mean, Ms. Ilubui talked about 14.3 based on the report that was launched in 2019. Your organization has been chasing after, I mean, you have many reports of intercepting certain levels of drugs here and there, but
at the end of the day, how do we get to the point where knowledge makes for better care?
Thank you very much. But I think I lost you towards the end of your questions. But I think I heard you up to the extent is what do we do, or how do we get to where we are, given the statistic which have just been given by our colleagues in Lagos office? Well, if I may just answer the first part of your questions, and probably you have to go back to the second part, which I did not hear. It is true that we have a huge problem when it comes to drug use in Nigeria. And the research findings, which had just been explained by our colleagues in Lagos office, is what we have been working on. And in fact, without the agency, which is specifically fighting drugs, I know that it would have been more than this. But the federal government, in their own wisdom, decided to see how to curb this problem by setting up NDLEA. And NDLEA has been working so hard on this issue as a specialized police in the enforcement of drug issues. They have done so well, if I may say. If you know the expertise in NDLEA, our investigating officers, our prosecutors, our forensic analysts, and even our counselors, they're very good in their work. And if you look at the statistics of convictions, interdictions, and seizures they have made since the inception of this agency, you know that this country would have been worse for it if we don't have NDLEA fighting these drugs currently. And like I said, if you can repeat the last part of your questions, I'll probably go back to it again. But I tell you that the problem we have in Nigeria is huge. And we're doing everything possible to see how to stem the tide. You can see that even during lockdown, the COVID lockdown, our agents, our operatives were working. And they did a lot, they made a lot of seizures from different parts of the country, particularly those ones being hauled to the areas of insurgents and the extremist group. We had so many seizures from the hinterlands going towards the northeast. And my chairman was on this channel just about a few days ago, and he gave you the statistics on how drugs fuel terrorism, violent extremism, and so many cultism in this country. And we know how it has permeated every home, permeated schools as well. And then what we are doing, working hard with collaborators as well as partners like UNODC and some.
Mr. Haruna, we'll take a moment, and when we'll come back, we'll go back to that question of how can we curb this? Because with all the expertise you talked about, with the knowledge that's being put out there, with all the organizations that are working hard to say, okay, we can curb this thing, to educate the people and provide help, the numbers appear to continue to rise. How do we curb this? We'll look at that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Out of the nation's over 200 million people, about 70% constitute the youth, and over the past 1 year, nearly 15% of the adult population in Nigeria, which is around 14.3 million people, reported a considerable level of use of psychoactive drug substances. The highest level of drug use, according to a report by the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, was recorded among people between 25 to 39 years. While cannabis is identified as the most widely used drug, sedatives, heroin, cocaine, and a non-medical use of prescription opioids are also noted. This, according to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, poses a challenge to the nation.
We have a prevailing 14% drug abuse problem, which is like 5 times more than is available or obtainable in all other countries of the world. Generally, it is 5%, but in Nigeria, it's 14.3%.
The theme for this year's International Day Against Drug Abuse is Better Knowledge for Better Cure. A psychologist, Abby Goodman, says lack of adequate enforcement is responsible for the rise in the number of youths who use them.
There is no recreation center for the children. So obviously a lazy man, an idle man, what's he going to do? Turn into drug frustration, no job. So it's a problem in Nigeria. It's something we really need to look into and, have a public opinion, not just the government anymore, because if government are not doing enough, we need to come together as a citizen, both our home in diaspora, and save our country.
To mark the day in Abuja, members of the Nigerian Medical Association drew the attention of parents to the shocking statistics and called for their support in managing the condition of those already affected by drug abuse.
Parents, pay attention to your children. Make sure they're not being abused. Don't neglect them. Give them the attention. Engage them. Talk to them about drugs, about all the temptations and the evils that are out there. And then once somebody starts using drugs, all of us can tell that this person is acting differently. We need to seek medical treatment right away. And we have people who are trained to treat drug abuse.
The effect of drug abuse on any nation is unquantifiable. The challenge is therefore before government, civil society organizations and parents to act fast in reducing this trend before it becomes a national emergency.
Thank you for staying with us. So we have Ms. Verk here, Mrs. Ilubui, and Mr. Haruna from our Abuja studio, and they've all talked about what's being done. Mr. Haruna has talked about the amount of expertise at the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency and how much of interceptions that have been going on. And Ms. Verk, before Mr. Haruna came on, you talked about the need for knowledge and how much knowledge can help. But we notice that the numbers continue to rise. For instance, in 2018, 260 million people used drugs, increasing by 30% from 2009. That's not good. So with all the knowledge and help provided and all of that, why are the numbers still rising?
I mean, that's, again, a good question. And I want to second what Mr. Shadrach Haruna says. There is a lot of expertise. The figures that you're quoting are global figures. And there is a lot of expertise globally. There's a lot of expertise in Nigeria. But obviously, we need to do more. And the reason we need to do more is expertise is concentrated, let's say, in NDLEA, is concentrated in the Ministry of Health, people like Maria who have it. But we have to make this expertise available to the public as well. Well, the thing is, while there is a lot of expertise in the country, we need to do more.
No, the question I asked was, why are the numbers rising? Because if we're not able to answer the why, then we may not know the how.
I agree. And I think the numbers rise. If you look at the global figures, for example, what the World Drug Report does say is drug use is going higher, is increasing in developing countries versus developed countries. And one of the reasons for that is that they have younger populations, for example. So we need data to understand why this is happening. And part of the reasons we know that numbers are increasing is actually because we have better surveys. Last year, Nigeria carried out its survey, the survey that Maria alluded to, and so did India. And these are both very populous countries. When they got better data, global figures went up as well. So I think sometimes it's about just getting better information. Sometimes it's understanding demography. But also, I think we do need to appreciate that you need to put in funding into this issue as well. The World Drug Report talks about how globally aid on drug issues has decreased in the same decade that drugs has gone up. So the question would be, the European Union in Nigeria has been very generous with their support to the country. That's the project I work on. But we also and we know that the government of Nigeria, the president himself, has set up a committee to look into drugs. But this also needs to match the funding that NDLEA and other ministries and other departments and CSOs receive. NDLEA's funding, and I'm sure Mr. Shadrach Haruna will talk about this, has not been increasing. And there is obviously need for that as well, so that they can adequately respond. I mean, the expertise is there, but then what?
Ms. Dubé, what do we do?
Okay, so what Mr. Shadrach said was very important, using the supply reduction method to ensure that drugs are not manufactured, or there is a disruption where there is a manufacture, illicit trafficking is checked, and then of course there are controls and regulations on controlled drugs and even illicit substances. But I don't think that is enough, because one, in Nigeria, like Hashad said, the funding isn't that good. But even in places where there is a lot of funding, for instance, in the US, as of 2015, yes, there was a federal funding for their drug control to the tune of 25 billion US dollars. That same amount was also given to the state. So you would think that there will be a decrease. You would think it would be difficult to find drugs in the streets. It would be difficult for the traffickers to operate. But the reverse was the case. What happened? The prices of the drugs dropped, and the purity went up. Normally, when you have a scarce commodity, for instance, fuel, you know there will be adulterations, the price will go up, but this was very different. So that shows that supply reduction alone is not the way to go. So we should also look at other avenues of curbing this issue. We should look at drug demand reduction. All the activities, all the programs that we do to ensure that young people don't even start doing drugs. And then this will also include educational and prevention programs. And then how about those who are already using drugs? We should be looking at harm reduction, whereby the people who are using drugs can still function, can be alive, can be useful, can support their families despite their drug use.
You know, I asked the question, why are the numbers increasing? Why is the demand appearing to increase, the demand for drugs, especially in the developing countries?
I would say population. I would say we have better data, like Hashad said. I would say we are looking more seriously into these issues. Probably these things have been there, and without data, we can't really say what has been happening. And of course, we know that if you look at the people who use drugs the most, according to the National Household Use Survey, they are in that range of 25 to 39 years. Yes, these are young people.
Why are they using the drugs? You know,
Okay.
In leadership training, we said if you know the why, you'll understand how and when and where. So why are people even using the drugs?
People use drugs for different reasons. Okay. So we cannot give a blanket reason, one theory as to why people use drugs. There are different reasons. Some use drugs to cope with their problems. Some use drugs to improve their moods. Some use drugs to deal with their mental health issues. Some are just self-medicating. They don't want to go to the hospital. They feel they can do it by themselves. Some use it for recreation. Some use it, especially for young people, out of rebellion. Most times, yes.
Some to boost their self-esteem.
Yes, so
Mr. Haruna,
a lot of reasons.
Mr. Haruna, at the end of the day, the question is, we talked about how to curb the two ladies here have alluded to how to curb the use of drugs and the abuse of it, as the case may be. In the NDLEA, Ms. Verk has talked about funding for the NDLEA hasn't increased, but yet you've been doing more interceptions and all of that. So tell us, what do we do to curb this whole thing? Understanding the why will help.
Thank you very much. I think the reasons advanced by my colleague in the studio with you, they are very apt, because if you say why are they using drugs, it's something that Mrs. Eligbuhi has actually answered some of those questions. But how to curb this is what we have done. We've conducted our research, and we know that knowledge is one of the areas we can actually use to curb the drug demand reductions and all these issues. For instance, we discovered that the use of internet and the internet penetration in Nigeria is very high. And we have seen that so many activities are going on in the web, particularly in the dark web. We have seen that traditional drugs, which are being used before now, cocaine, heroin, cannabis, and others, we now have other ones which are being concocted locally. We have drugs which are being manufactured with the combinations of all the innocuous or prescribed drugs to become a very high potent psychoactive substance. And those ones are cheaply available to our youth. We have seen how people are buying drugs online outside the normal police enforcement duties. And we have also tried to see that we have that capacity. We have trained our officers to do the web surfing. We have trained our officers to know how to go to the dark web to see what is happening. So many of them are using bitcoins and other virtual currencies to purchase drugs. We have seen all those things. And we have seen how drugs atrocities have been laundered through virtual currencies. So these are issues that knowledge has to do with, and we have acquired that, and we are working hard. Of course, you mentioned the issue of funding. Funding is very key to our work, because all this knowledge you're talking about, acquiring the specialist investigation technique is not easy. Most of our officers are doing what we call self-training development, and they're also working with our partners like UNODC to have some training which will really equip them to go into internet surfing to see how drugs are being sold and purchased on the internet. So going to the dark net is not an easy thing. Trailing drug use, following virtual currency and all those things, particularly when you are going to the blockchains where this transaction is taking place, it's not an easy thing. And we are developing that capacity, but we need funding to do that. And how to curb it, we have come up with an idea, which of course we're going to float very soon, in as much as we need money. We also need a society to work with us. We need a whole society approach, in which case we want to see how traditional rulers, how local government chairmen, how women societies and all other bodies can join hands to work with the agency to fight and to curb this drug. It's not easy for the federal government funding alone. It's not easy for the federal government agency alone to fight these drugs. We need a combination of all spirit-filled individuals to come out, because there's no home that will not be affected. If we wait for government alone, then of course we'll be taken by surprise the way the drug use is going. And the future of Nigeria is at stake. Issues of security is very key to us. You can see what is happening all over the country. All these are fueled by drugs. My chairman said this at the last time he appeared here, that the insurgency in the Northeast is fueled by drug, because the theater commanders have actually informed us how much of this they have recovered. Tramadol, very cheap. Cannabis is grown everywhere. So we need a policing, and we need funding to see that we have that proper policing across the country. And of course, we thank the federal government, because recently they have approved for the recruitment of more officers. And the idea of the agency is to see that these officers are disseminated in all the nooks and crannies of this country. And we now have a very strong intelligence section of the agency. We have a computer database section of the agency. We're equipping them so much to see how they can also track all this use and know how drugs are being disseminated and distributed in the country. Purchases of drug, availability of hard drugs, availability of narcotic drugs. We have also seen how it's coming up, particularly the cultivation of cannabis. And we are going about to see how we can destroy some of them, working with farmers, working with pharmaceutical society organizations, research institute, and then to see what local materials are being used to concoct high-potent psychoactive substance, which is being used cheaply within the country. You discover that if care is not taken, you have to monitor your kids, sitting down in their own house, they concoct so many things to become psychoactive substance, and they take these drugs without you knowing it. In fact, recently we have
Mr. Haruna, let me bring in the ladies here so that as we begin to wind down. Ms. Hashedberg, yesterday was the actual day that the Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking was celebrated, 26th of June this year, with the theme, Better Knowledge for Better Care, with the hashtag, for those on social media, hashtag Facts for Solidarity. As we wind down now, what's the way forward?
The way forward is, I think we need to do more. We need to have better information. We need a balanced approach to deal with this issue of drugs. So a balanced approach means obviously a big focus on supply side reduction, but similarly to what Maria said, also focusing on drug demand reduction, prevention programs which focus on what you alluded to earlier, the cause of drug use. If we know, for example, that a poor family environment can lead to drug use, we need to do programs to address families. Then we need to do programs that address schools. So I would say a balanced approach, a knowledge-based approach. Do interventions that work. Don't waste your money on interventions that don't work. So, that would be the way forward.
Maria?
Okay, so I would also agree totally with Hashet that having a better knowledge, especially of the risk factors. So you were talking about why the other time. And I talked about the risk factors, and I mentioned the risk factors, and also knowing the protective factors. So that way there could be a balance. So you decrease the risk factors, and then you increase the protective factors. I think that would be very helpful for young people.
All right. Thank you very much. We're speaking with Ms. Hachette Vert, Project Coordinator, Responsible Drugs and Related Organized Crimes in Nigeria. Mrs. Maria Mfon Ilubi, Counselor and founder of the Shelter NGO, and Mr. Shadrach Haruna, Secretary of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, who joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. We wish you well, and we hope that we can, the next time we're talking about this, the numbers will be going down instead of going up. Sorry to be back in a moment. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're now looking at leading in uncertain times. But just before we do that, someone who took a step here, Yusuf Arolambo says, I did a research on using remote sensing to detect cannabis plantation. He says, let NDLEA reach out to the Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation for more on this. That's coming from Yusuf Arolambo. I did a research on using remote sensing to detect cannabis plantation. NDLEA, he says, you should reach out to the Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation for more on this. Okay, so leading in uncertain times. Gotney Leadership Institute, or Leadership Center, is a non-governmental focused on redefining Africa's approach to leadership. It is gearing up for 2 days of virtual leadership training taking place. That's next week. And we have the Leadership Development Coach, a representative from Gotney Leadership Center, joining us, Mr. Linus Okorie. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Okorie.
Thank you very much, my brother, and then good morning to Nigerian people.
So in the next few days, you're hosting a virtual leadership program, a leadership training program. Tell us about that.
So in times like this, we all woke up one morning and from every major city of the world, the term COVID-19 hit everybody by surprise. And so the aggression of the information, the passion, the commitment of the media in driving it, at the end of the day, had a lot of impact on the minds of people all over the world. I mean, people became afraid. The fear of the unknown, anxiety, and high level of depression, began to, hit the people. And so even leaders became paranoid. And when the leader is paranoid, who takes the lead? It is in view of this that we began to think into the future to say, hey, wait a minute. If this crisis is over, COVID crisis is over, what will be the economic situation in our country and countries in Africa and around the world? And so it is in that reality that we began to think about hosting a global leadership training that will focus on getting people to be able to develop certain skills that will help them cope with the challenges that will come post this crisis. And so the theme of this conference or training is facing the future without fear and leading in uncertain times. And so we even thought about, let's get some authorities, some very powerful people that would drive this process. And that's why we reached out to a great man, Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy is an author of several books who is making waves around the world. And the first person that has written extensively on leadership in times of crisis. So the great Brian Tracy will be leading this leadership training session with people like George Fraser from the US, Christine Cripps from Canada, Lanre Olushola from Nigeria, and myself. And the Gotney Leadership Center here in Abuja is going to be driving that process. So we want to begin to think ahead that there are important leadership ideas that are key in times like this. Mind
leadership is important. Business leadership is important. Personal leadership is important. Organizational leadership is important, as well as community and national leadership. So that means that every individual that is listening to me today, you have the opportunity to say, you know what, how do I reinvent my business? How do I reinvent my organization? How can I get my people to be able to think differently, to be able to act differently in times like this, where the resources are now very scarce? How do we mobilize the people to be able to meet the objectives of our organizations? And this requires very sound leadership development training. And, this is why this is the most important training that will happen, this time in this part of the world.
Okay. Mr. Correa, the Gopni Leadership Center, it's not new. You've always had, it's like an annual conference you have about this time of the year. So, indeed, the pandemic has caused some reinventing here. So tell us a bit about the plans of Gopni to see a sustainability of this situation, so to speak, this new reinventing process.
So very important. It is important for me to say that Guardians of the Nation International, that is driving conferences around the country, has gone a step further to set up the Gopni Leadership Center, which is away from the conferencing. It's now institutionalizing leadership development. And so, usually we institutions will send our very best to Harvard University, to Kennedy School of Government, to different institutions in the world. But today, I want to, state clearly, and proudly so, that these 25 years of our pushing leadership developments has yielded fruits. That right now in the city of Abuja, we have set up the most comprehensive leadership center, leadership institution that, Nigeria can save money now, with local content, with over 25 courses that we teach at our leadership center, with the best of faculty within and outside this country. We can now train in Nigeria at a rate that will, compete favorably with international rate. And take, for instance, that, in November, I went to San Diego to spend 4 days with Brian Tracy. I paid $10,000 to be able to have, away from my air ticket. Imagine how much money government can save if we can now have training right here in Abuja in a most comprehensive faculty and facility that has, top-notch global leadership training, facilities within our institution. Imagine now that we are now giving people the opportunity to say, with $100, for instance, you can now participate in a global leadership training that is a certificate program. And at the same time, anywhere you are in the world, in your bedroom, you can, in your parlor, you can just connect via Zoom and spend 2 days of learning, a learning that will help reorganize your mind process. If you have teams working with you, this is the best time to be able to say, you know what, I would want to sponsor and send a couple of members of my team so that they can develop the mindset that is needed in times like this. You require, a resilient mindset that is filled with vision and high level of commitment to be able to survive these times. You cannot have the same thinking that you have had all these years, and you think the same thinking will take you to the next level. In the new normal, it is impossible. And so that is why we are looking into the system whereby government officials will begin to invest in this type of training and say, let's go and hear from the best of the world. Learn from the very best of the world. It's a learning system so that at the end of the day, we will develop the kind of capacity that is needed to be able to drive government policy to the next level. Business owners who are going to be worst hit by the challenges that we're facing right now will also begin to find new ways of reinventing themselves and repositioning their businesses, to be able to compete in the marketplace. For me, I think that, the Gotney Leadership Center is ready to drive this process, and we are asking anyone listening to me today, you have a chance to say, I want to be part of, history. I want to be part of those that will listen to Brian Tracy, George Fraser, Christine Cripps, Lanre Olushola, and Linus Okorie. 5 days of intensive learning system is unbelievable.
Okay. When is this training starting, and how can one register?
Okay, so good. So the Gotney Global Leadership Training is starting on Monday. Monday and Tuesday, 6 p.m. daily. In fact, 6 to 9 p.m. daily. So it's a 3-hour learning system per day. And then it's going to run for 2 whole days specifically. And anyone who is interested to participate, what you can do is to go to our website, www.gotney.africa, www.gotni.africa, or you actually send a text message to this number, 081 5791 9770. I repeat the number again, 081 579 19770. So you send a text message, just $100, you have your seat. And, the seats are now limited, and at the end of the day, you will be part of history. I want to say this. A parent called me a few days ago and asked me, can I send, my children that are above 18 years of old? I said, this is the best gift you can give to your grown-up child right now, or your son or daughter, even those working for organizations, is to say, I want to sponsor them to be part of this history-making event. And the more they come in, you develop a new set of young women and young people and managers and operational leaders who are coming with high level of speed in their thoughts, in terms of new mindset and very powerful way of thinking. And I want to also say this. There's a gentleman called Hey Mote. Hey Mote was the gentleman that was giving the opportunity of privatizing 700 government-owned companies in former Eastern Germany. And, he was giving about 32 staff to do that with 1 or 2, to be able to privatize 1 or 2 companies per day. When he succeeded in doing it, and they asked him, how did you succeed in this? And he simply said, there are no models. There are no models. What has happened, what COVID-19 has brought to the world is something that, literally was unexpected. The world will never remain the same. Therefore, it is your responsibility at this point in time to developing your leadership competencies as an individual and ensure that members of your team, private companies, banks, institutions must invest now like never before in the leadership competencies of their team members. Government institutions must invest like never before in the leadership competencies of their people, so that at the end of the day, we will be able to have people ever ready, people always reinventing in the process, people doing things differently with passion and commitment, so that at the end of the day, we can bet new companies, we can bet new processes, and things will be much more different as a result of the kind of investment we have made in our mind. So this is an opportunity that we have brought to you.
So you said registration is at www.gotney.africa. There you do your registration. But the question, one final question is there a chance for those who can't afford $100 or $199?
So what we're going to do is that if there are Nigerians who are passionate about investing in leadership development, you can also call us and say you want to sponsor as many people as possible we would provide scholarships for, those people as well. So the wealthy individuals in this country, must not also just give charity. They should also invest in the minds of people. There are a lot of people who are ready to participate because this is purely a leadership institution, and we have subsidized it in a way that so many people can afford it. But those who cannot afford it, can benefit from, scholarships given by wealthy Nigerians who want to say, I want to sponsor as many young people as possible or as many business owners as possible. Banks can say, I want to sponsor business owners that work with our institutions or they're banking with us. And we will be ready to give them the opportunity to participate. But I can say to you, it is something that has a certain...
Mr. Linus Okorie, thank you, Leadership Development Coach with the GovNI Global Leadership Center. Thank you so much. And this event is from the 29th of June. It's a 2-day conference, and starting 29th of June. Registration fee is $100 discounted, but the main fee is $199. At www.gotni.africa, there you go to do your registration, and it's virtual. After registration, you get the log-on details for the conference. Thank you. We wish you well, Mr. Linus Okorie. Sunrise will be back for the home stretch. Just stay with us. So, born with the birth name Debo Adedayo, hails from Lagos State, born to a family of 10. His recalled childhood memories via an interview clearly showed his father still took good care of them all. However, Mr. Adedayo won't be complete without discussing his career journey and educational rifts. They call him Mr. Macaroni. Now, calling that name alone is making me hungry. But he's here, and there you see it. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
I know this is your trademark, but do you mind if we see your eyes?
How much you pay? Serious.
So how are you, Mr. Macaroni?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm very fine.
Okay, so he's a social media sensation. His skits, we saw a couple of your skits, and you just stepped out in a world of your own.
Yeah.
What gave you that idea? How did you come about this?
It wasn't like I just started it. I've been trying other stuff, right? So I've played the role of an old school teacher, played the role of a lover boy, a young boy, hustling. I've been doing different things. But suddenly, I got the muse for this sugar daddy kind of thing. All of these men that, they see a young lady and they're like, so that was the muse. And I figured out that, you see, those type of men just want to, take advantage of those ladies, so to say. So the first time I tried that skit with that character, that daddy character, a lot of people fell in love with it. And they were, yes, we know people like this, this. So I saw the comments, and then I began to intentionally create stories around that character.
Okay, so you're one man who's gone through all manner of things.
Right.
So you went to a private university at 200 levels, you left.
Yes.
Because of accreditation.
Right.
You went to another private university.
Yes.
You must be very wealthy. In the family of 10, your father must be...
let me say, my parents just happened to be people who were determined that this boy,
you must
go
to
to school and you get a degree.
Okay. So you went to second year and decided to have issues with the lecturer.
Right.
Why would you choose to have issues with the lecturer?
No, he had issues with me. What I feel is that the way it is, if you're a student in an academic setting, if you're a student, which I don't think is too good, they don't expect you as a student to have a voice or to have an opinion or to want to say something. Everyone just feels, the student, what you're here for, but we can't continue like that, because at the end of the day, those students will come out as robots. Okay. A university, a university environment is supposed to be there for interaction. You're there, you're able to talk to your lecturers are able to talk to you, and, so that story, we had issues with ourselves.
Okay, so the third, in these two universities, you were to study law?
Yes.
Chai. So you go to the third university to study creative arts.
Right.
And they tell you they don't have creative arts. How did they give you the admission for creative arts in the first place?
Help me. You know, the school is far away, somewhere else. We did the exam, the interview in Lagos. I was given admission for theater arts. We paid school fee, we did everything. Getting to the school, the Dean of Student Affairs now called me to his office and tells me, my son, we have not actually started theater arts, but you know, this English, you can still do English, you can still do media. You know. So I looked at myself, I looked at him like, this is my third university. Me that have come here, I know the reason why I've come. It is this theater I want to do. So calling me to now tell me you don't have a course you gave me admission for is preposterous. You know, I don't understand. So that was how that one went.
Okay, so you now get to a fourth university.
Right.
And you're expelled.
Yes. After I've finished the exam,
Wait, after you had finished your exam?
I finished my exams, defended
Final
my project.
exams and everything?
Yes, defended my project, gotten my results, you know. But, you know, of course, you know, I was a student association president. So let me just say misunderstanding, because now we're all good. I've settled. So it was just misunderstanding. But the crux is that at the end of the day, I got my certificate, I graduated, went for
From
NYSC.
that fourth university?
Yes, from that.
But do you want to tell us, what was that matter that got you expelled and then had to be reconciled?
Like I said, it was misunderstanding.
It was said to be a social media post you made on Facebook?
Yes. So, and that was because my administration, you know, the kind of person that I am, I always say that I believe in truth, in love, and justice. So I like to be able to speak up against any ills or against anything I feel can be better. You know, when we criticize then as president, when I would say, this is not too good, it's not because I do not like the management or because I do not like the school. It's because I'm working with you to help make the school better, you know, as it should be. I always say, there's no amount of advert you can do to sell a university. It's the students. The students are the one that will sell the university for you. Whatever they tell people outside, whatever they tell their parents, their friends, oh, my school is so lovely. That's what sells the school. So it was just me trying to, but you know how when our guys feel maybe the boy is too aggressive, he's too arrogant, he doesn't listen, he doesn't want to work with us. So when I now finished, you know, that was me. That Facebook post was me putting out my mind in a way, you know. Of course, like I said, you know, when we settled, I said, yes, I don't think the words used were too good, you understand. But in the long run, you know, we've been able to settle. Right now, I have good relationship even with my ogas at the past, those that we had issues with, and we're all good.
We're all sorted out. So what did you study eventually?
Theater arts.
Theater arts.
Yes.
And you're glad you did?
Because that's you know, that's always what
But you always wanted to study law.
Yes.
So how are you going to do
that
it?
law? You see, theater has been inside me, right from as early as I can remember. You know, I would go about mimicking pastors, you know. So when I wanted to go to school, because of my personality, someone who believes in truth, love, and justice, I said, okay, it wouldn't be bad to do law. In a way, I think you already know this theater thing. Just do law, and then you can still be doing your theater. So that was the history with the law. Like, okay, let me just get a law degree.
So are you going to go back to study law sometime?
Honestly, right now, I'm not so sure. I'm not
Why?
so sure.
Because the money has started rolling in?
But trust me, if I want to go back to school, it would now be to learn about, to advance my craft in different orders.
So how do your parents take this creation of yours?
Oh, trust me. They've been ever supportive. They've been anything, you know, for all of us in the family, anything that you have decided to do, anything that you picked to do, my parents are just, you know, go ahead, and then they support you. And now that everything is like this, they keep calling me, we keep talking, they keep praying for me, and it's obvious that they're happy for my growth, and
So we understand you're born into a family of 10.
Right.
What's your position?
9.
So you have just one person behind you.
Right.
So what do your
That's
other
right.
ones think about?
See, we are just one big happy family, you know. And from time to even right now, the truth is, I hardly, which worries me in some kind of way. Right now, I don't have so much time for my folks, my friends, and everything, because the work and everything. But they still always find time to. Oh, you hope you're resting, hope you're doing. So we still. Everyone is happy.
You chose this creation of yours. What's his name again? What's his name? What's the name you gave your creation? Mr. Freaky Freaky.
We can just say Father Figure.
Okay, Daddy, that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's
Daddy. So this creation, Daddy, that you created,
yes.
How did you come about it? You said you thought about the sugar daddy thing. And
Yes,
you thought to...
because it's something I've seen a lot. Movies, even day-to-day interactions with some of the big men, this and that. You know, sometimes you see some of them, maybe they are, you know, they're in a joint and everything, and the girl is like, but, you know, it is the intention, it is the intent. It is what they are really thinking and what they really want to do that, you know, formed that character. Because when you say someone is a young girl that you know how she grew up and everything, and you start to look at her some kind of way, or you start to call her that, you've gone out of a father figure, and now you've become something else that is not so appropriate.
So in the course of this, since you created this character, have you had issues with some of this, in quote, sugar daddies?
Actually, no. You see,
because you've opened up their ways.
Yes, but the truth is, most of the elderly men I see, when they see me, say, you are not serious. You know, it's all fun, and you know they just laugh over it. You know, so I don't think I've not actually had any issue with any one of them saying this. No, when they see me, some of them will even do some of my gimmicks, and it's always funny.
But do you think you're making an impact?
I think that is relative, you know. For some people, maybe. For some others, maybe not. But by virtue of my study of theater arts and the caliber of lecturers that taught me, headed by Professor Ahmed Yerima, and other amazing lecturers, Johnny Wu, Barbarian Day, and a lot of them, they taught me that theater is for entertainment, it's for information, it's for education, societal rejuvenation. So they are telling me that your story when someone sees something that you create, that person must be able to take away something from it.
All right. And at that point, we'll take a moment and we'll come back to tidy up this conversation. Just stay with us. Okay, so father figure. So these words, you coined words like phrases like "you're doing well."
Yeah.
Freaky,
fantabulous.
Where did you get? I mean, how did you just come up with these things?
Honestly, if I say I know how, I would be lying. I want to say, you know, I don't know, because I'm on set and when I'm acting. In fact, when I script all of these things down.
You script them yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I write them and I script them down, most of what I eventually do while we're on set is not what I script down. Because it is when we're actually filming that the other stuff will now start coming.
So you don't script your dialogue?
I do, especially when I want to feature the top shots likes of Prince Jide Kosoko, and I need them to see what the entire. But you know, drama is beyond that. So when you get on set, when you're actually performing it, then other things will begin to come to life. So most of those phrases, you know, I remember working, and all of a sudden, something else would just
But then they stick. You tend to use them.
Yeah, and that is because the audience are always jamming me. So till now, in as much as I want to still reducing the way I say you're doing well, till now you see comments like, you do not say you are doing well here. Some will say, I did not hear oin. Some will say, no, freaky. So even as I want to, I'm creating different series now, especially the in-law series now. I'm doing that one newly. Some other people will still come and say, hey, no, we did not say freaky. Some people, so I've come to realize that of course,
father figure is known for something.
Exactly. So a lot of them just want to hear this. Some of them, if they don't hear this, they are not happy. Some will say the way you remove your glasses. If I don't remove the glasses like that, it's a problem for some people, So it's just been like that.
But we're in a pandemic, and you're sort of like riding on the wave of the pandemic and taking advantage of it. How are you doing that?
Well, I like to say that for drama, society creates the basic raw materials for any artist to create his or her own art, right? So right now we're in a pandemic. Something that's never plagued the world has come. So for the artist, you need to look at the environment and then study what is going on, and then use what is going on to create your art. So that was how the coronavirus thing, when it came, the skits for the coronavirus, a lot of the way I now perform, the current situation we're in has influenced that. So,
Okay.
so it's basically society, what happens at the time.
Why did you choose Mr. Macaroni?
Did I even choose Mr. Macaroni? No. It was, I think as far back as 2012 or 2013, I was on set, face-to-face, extra, playing the role of an extra. So at the time, the character that I was playing was nameless. These characters that just was boy 1 or boy 2. So, but the director now wanted for the character to have a name. So he just, when I was about going on set, he just said, give yourself one name there now. And from nowhere, I just said Mr. Macaroni, with the mindset that it's a comic. What we're doing is a comic, and Mr. Macaroni is supposed to be one happy, jolly fellow. So I just said Mr. Macaroni. And since then,
stuck.
Yeah, stuck.
So what are your plans for the future?
It's by God's grace. For me, I always say that this that I'm doing right now is all I've always wanted to do. It's where I see myself. Entertainment, performing, and all of that. So I think by God's grace, we can only continue to evolve. I want to create several other characters. I want to bring in as many creatives, as many talents that I can bring in. By God's grace, the platform is there already. So it's going to be a great thing to see other people, other amazing talents. The country is blessed with a lot of talents. So it's going to be a thing of joy to see other talents come up and do their own thing. Not what I'm doing, but another thing. And of course, I plan to do series, movies. Plans are in motion, and I know by God's grace.
And all of it to make people happy.
Well, and while we're making people happy, fulfilling my dreams.
And educating the ladies against freaky. I'm trying not to use the phrase.
Right.
Well done. Done. We wish you well. Okay, somebody here, Imoyaba says, your university should make you an ambassador and pay you. Imagine all the brand value you accrue to them when you mention their name. Thank you, Mr. Macaroni, or Mr. Debo Adedayo, a.k.a. Mr. Macaroni.
Right.
Well done.
Thank you
well
very
done.
much. Thank you for having
How did you feel at that skit you did with Mr. Kosoko? And
in fact, it was amazing for me. Working with someone, although I've worked with him, but having him on my project, and he came, he performed, he gave his best.
And Sheila.
His A-game.
I can imagine all the other things you do.
Right.
Mr. Macaroni, again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And, this is where we say thank you for letting us be a part of your day. It's been an odd 3 hours. I want to thank you so much. My name is Neo Taigbe. As you go out there, enjoy the rest of your day. Be the best you can be. But please know this. We're in a situation that requires everyone to take responsibility for himself and for the next man. So protect yourself
and so protect your neighbor and also protect your environment. Live well, live sustainably, conserve energy, and let's conserve our earth. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good day.